All right, folks, we're back with the third part of the Show Me Rally 2020 series. This is basically where we talk about how the race went and pressing on regardless, or so we hoped. Like I said, this is the last of three parts. If you haven't seen the first two parts, I strongly recommend going back and watching those because a lot will make a lot more sense. So, yeah, thanks for watching and enjoy the rest of the story.
The Friday stages, there was going to be 4 stages on Friday, 6 stages on Saturday. The Friday stages, the same 2 stages repeated twice each. You went out and did Pandora, White River, and then KP'd all the way along in a leg, came back for service, then did it again. And we did Pandora, White River once at 100 Acre Wood 2018. I'd watched some videos, and we wrecked it 3 times. And I felt really confident about it. It felt like a really fun stage, and once we were out there, it became really clear that the notes that Jim wrote down were really good. Like, it's not that anything is inherently wrong with the Jemba stage notes they give us at 100 Acre Wood, but they're written in such a way that I feel like the fast teams are really going to benefit from the amount of detail and the resolution of the information, so to speak. You know, turns can be divided into, it can be subdivided into, you know, R1 through 6, and then you have your pluses and your minuses, then you have your acutes, your sharps, your hairpins, your squares. So many different calibers of turns. And quite frankly, as a driver, I was ready to come into this, be like, forget the numbers. Just give me easy, medium, and hards, lefts and right turns. Anything more detailed than that, I don't think is going to benefit. It's just going to become noise in my head that I just learn to start blocking out along with the important information. And so we decided to stick with a number system. And it's more or less fine. I feel like the notes were honestly, you know, the best we've had. And we're taking that with us into the next race where we're given supplied stage notes. And to maybe consider really editing those notes rather than just taking them for what they are and just, you know, tweaking them. And so we went out, and I told myself I was going to take it easy. And the times probably showed that I was taking it easy. Especially compared to the variety of other teams in similar class doing the same stage. But I was feeling pretty good during that stage. I was taking some of those turns harder than I think I have before at all. We came out of that stage feeling really good about it. I was doing the math in my head. I think we hit 48 stage miles per hour. I think it was 48 average across the whole stage. Which I think was faster than our last run of that stage in 2018. And we were coming into KP all along, which of course is more commonly known as the cattle guard stage, which is where they have the giant cattle guard jump that everyone catches air off of. We've done it 3 times going into this race, hit the jump every time, and it's always been mostly successful, even if the stage leading into that is fairly rough. And it was to be the longest stage of the entire weekend, and so, you know, 53 cars back. We're hoping nobody biffs the jump so bad that we don't get to run it. And so we're going through it. And, you know, for the most part, there's some acute left turns in that stage that are just impossible to do anything. You know, the road's so narrow and so rough, you can't even really flick it that hard, at least not for us. And so we just have to just take those as they come. And, you know, we hit the jump. I feel like a combination of Jim's notes and just my state of awareness on stage. I knew the jump was coming way faster than I normally do. Usually with that stage, especially with the stage or the organizer supplied notes, there's so much noise in those notes where, like, I feel like I see the entrance to the jump 3 or 4 times before it actually happens. And so I'm like, this is the jump. And I'm like, no, this is too early. We're way too early in the stage. And then by the time the jump actually comes around, I'm nowhere near prepared for it. in a safe way. I'm usually just going very slow. So this time, his notes are lined up, and we we knew that the jump was maybe 3/4 of a mile after what the turn that I told Jim to write down as Jake's fence, where Jake Burke went off and pulled a whole bunch of barbed wire up and wrapped up in the front of his car, and so I knew it was coming up, and I just kind of kept on the throttle. As soon as I saw the opening, I just downshifted and slammed it. And I've seen some video, I've seen some pictures. It always feels like we're soaring. It always feels like we're about to freaking hit exit velocity, even though it just like we get off the ground that much. It feels really cool, even though it doesn't. Compared to like Micah, who's a madman, just always just full sends it. It's nothing compared to him, right? But it still feels very cool. And so we're coming out of that, and there's that second jump where you almost get enough air, and I think we just kind of felt the suspension unload. And there's that, like that right 5, and then you go down into a left 3 and a right 3, and you start going through those like last like twisty like farm side turns, and the stage is red crossed. Armentrout's out. He hit a tree so bad that they had to like cut him out of it. It was a real awful, gnarly crash. And as far as he sustained injuries, but he is alive, and which is great that he's alive. It sucks that he sustained injuries and the car is totaled. And it red crossed the stage. I felt that was, if that stage was finished, would have been our best time ever on that stage. And of course, my GoPro wasn't recording. Jim's watch wasn't recording. We have no means of knowing how fast we were going on that stage, and that's a bummer. But get them next time. As far as I could tell, we were going to run that stage again later that night anyway. And so about halfway through that stage, before the jump, I looked down and I noticed my gauge cluster is not doing what it's supposed to be doing. This is where our night starts turning for the worst. Gauge cluster on Subaru has 2 plugs coming in. I think both have a 12-volt source, both have a ground. And so I've had issues where when the gauge cluster was flopping around because it wasn't mounted properly, the membrane type circuit board on the back would short out against ground. It would fry a trace, right? So you would lose lights, lose half your cluster, what have you. And so usually that meant that there was a missing ground or something. And so we're driving on stage, and I'm like, well, we lost the left half, so I lost coolant temp and I lost tach. And that tach signal is the same tach signal that supplies signal to my aftermarket shift light, so that's not working either. So I just have to rely on my ears to shift. And so I'm like, well, maybe we'll try to fix it in service. The way service was set up was that the time control was at the next intersection down from the city park, so you had to drive over there, wait in line, go through, turn around, come back out onto Highway 8, go back down to City Park, and then go around the loop to where your service spot is. Well, our service spot was right at the end because I thought, that's going to be cool. We'll be able to just hop out of service and we're right at time control. But the problem was that time control was backed up with all the cars that were finished with service. So we had to wait for them to move for us to get into our service spot, which was a huge oversight on my part. And it basically, that combined with the time control, ate up like 10 or 15 minutes of service. And so, I'm like, Jim, when are we out of service? And he tells me the time, and I'm like, I don't know that I feel confident taking this cluster out in that much time. We were concerned we were burning oil, had some other things to check, and so we just decided to go ahead and check the oil level. It's fine. And then start wrapping up our stuff, right? That way it's in... Chuck started our team out to hold on to our stuff overnight, and we would service near them the next day, and that way they've got it. We don't have to load anything back into the car to go back to the hotel. So we start wrapping all that stuff up, and we head back out onto the trails, and the caps for the lights come off, and we're heading out to do night stages. Same 2 stages, but now at night. And so the sun is setting. Jim's turning on his nav light, start getting prepared and acclimated to do the night stages. And we're coming down, I think, Highway BB, which goes right into Pandora White River. And as I'm like navigating, Jim says to me, he's like, "Hey man, when the last time you did anything with your alternator? You know, every time you hit the brakes or turn signals, the light dims, right? This little nav light dims." I'm like, "Yeah, it's the one that came with the car, but I think it's always done that. I think it has always, as long as we've been doing this, I think it's always done that." And so we're going, and we find the line of cars waiting, and we're on 2-minute dust windows now, all of us. They canceled stage 4 of the night, so we weren't going to be doing the jump again. We just had to get through Pandora White River once, and we're in good shape. And we had a 2-minute dust window at night, so I'm like, this is going to be a really good running, I think. And so as we're pulling up to the line of cars that's backed up well beyond the start, Jim's light is getting dimmer and dimmer and dimmer to where it's not even there. And it got to the point where the lights that were on my cluster, which were the ones that were left, I thought I had left my sunglasses on, despite the fact that I wasn't ever wearing any. And so I had this moment of panic, like, oh no, something is desperately wrong. And sure enough, our alternator was no longer charging the car. In my head, I'm thinking our alternator is shot. This happened to Darren at Hunter Wood 2019, I think. And so to me, it felt like an immediate problem, right? Like it had stopped on the way to stage, and we had 5 minutes of battery life, and the car started bogging down real bad. And the red car, my Impreza, was bogging down real bad when it caught fire. And so I was naturally just kind of like, dude, the car is bogging, let's shut it off and just figure it out. And so we shut it off, and not only will the car not start again, it's got nothing. It's got no ice. My wideband O2 went from saying battery to just saying nothing. And so at this point, we told ourselves anything sketchy started happening, we were going to bail because this car has to get us both home. This is something sketchy. I think we have to bail. And so we kind of used some momentum, pulled over to the side of the road. We had safety sweep kind of just flat tow us up to the side of the road, and we just sat there and just kind of started thinking about what was going to happen next. I woke up that morning thinking, this is rally, right? The idea behind this is that you press on regardless, okay? That's the phrase everyone throws around. You just keep going no matter what. And I had a lot of that drive in me when I decided, maybe we can save this rally, right? Maybe that's a feasible thing to do, is to try to make this happen. And there was a great number of bad luck things that had already happened to me the week prior, and some that still were to come. And so it got to the point where I'm like, how, do you press your luck, right? How far do you go? And how you need to be equipped to gamble, so to speak. We didn't have a truck and trailer to get us back home. We didn't have another vehicle, right? We were as a team, running on fumes. And so at that point, sitting on the side of the road, just outside of start on stage 3, the last stage of the night, I'm just committing in my head, let's just try to get home, right? That's a sucky thing to think in this sport, right? We've DNF'd before, and, we DNF'd at Hunter Wood 2018. We super rallied. We came back the next day. We DNF'd at 2018 Show Me Rally on the last stage. We DNF'd at 2019 Missouri Ozark Rally on the last stage. The real stinger about this one was, if I'm being quite honest, it wasn't that we were DNFing, right? That's happened. It was that we were DNFing so early, right? So much more rally left, right? Frankly, I didn't get my money's worth, and it's not that I'm upset with ARA or the organizers. None of them did anything wrong, right? Um, I'm just upset with like the circumstances, right? Um, honestly, a lot of this is, I still hold myself responsible for a lot of this because it was my hubris or stupidity or arrogance or whatever you want to call it that put me in the car to go to St. Louis where it burned down. Um, if I would have just been patient enough to handle it the next day, or just been willing to just pop start that car throughout an entire rally, like none of this would have happened, right? And so I'm sitting there just kind of like just festering, I guess. I'm not like super angry about it because we got to race a little bit. And we're talking about like there's like a chance to come back and race the next day, right? There's a chance to super rally. We didn't have the sups with us, which was a dumb mistake to not have the sups or to not look at the sups. We weren't sure how much of the chances of a super rally there were. But even if we could super rally, do we try to fix the alternator and get back out there? An alternator is not a critical failure, right? I can put an alternator on that car in 15 minutes. And it's one of those things like, it just kind of goes out. Can I blame myself for an alternator going out? I can only blame myself insofar as not knowing the history of the alternator, right? That alternator came with the car when I bought it in 2016. So that alternator could have been put on a month before I bought it. It could be the alternator that came with the car 300,000 miles ago. Which is it? We don't know. And so I could sit there and blame myself a little bit. But I was just kind of processing it, digesting it, and just committing to it. This is the way it's going to be. I'm not going to try to mess with. There's nothing to do. I don't have an alternator here I could put on it, right? I had Jim check the connections, make sure everything's sound. It was all there. As far as I was concerned, it was just needed to be replaced. So we arranged to have a flat tow take us back all the way to Huza, which was I think I looked up, it was like 11 miles. I can't remember. Don't quote me on the mileage. It was a decent ways away, and so we got both of us in the car, being flat towed by I believe a Raptor or F-150, and I'm just holding the brakes. These are the brand new Hawk performance pads, right? And the rotors or whatever we bought the first time we tried to put them on, they're probably cheap rotors. Usually I go cheap rotors on expensive pads just because I'm going to burn through the rotors. And so we're riding the brakes for so long on the flat toe. Right as soon as we start to see Huza, I start feeling this like vibration in the brakes. And then it just getting worse and worse and worse until it's just constant, just right as we're pulling into Huza. And it became clear that on top of the alternator issues, on top of burning the car down, on top of everything that's happening this week, we've now roasted our front rotors. And so even if we could get an alternator, we now have to deal with the fact that our brake rotors are warped. And they will probably be fine to drive on once they cool down, but not fine to race on. And so now we're just like, we're back at Huza, where we don't have great cell service. We have Wi-Fi in like one 6-foot circle out by the lobby of the hotel, and everyone else we know is everyone that we know that is part of a Subaru team is staying in Potosi. So if we can get the parts, they're in Potosi. We can't get the Potosi because I don't have a car to get us a Potosi because I burned it down. We're just up against such adversity at this point. And so those two factors were enough, I think, for both of us to easily agree we're not going to get back in the race, as much as it pains us to do so. And so we walked back from the hotel lobby to our room, just kind of chilled for a minute. I think at that point, by the time we got back there, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I knew I was so tired. I only slept 3 hours the night before. I was so tired, I slept with my feet elevated and my socks on. And I can't do either of those in any circumstance. I just fell asleep where I laid. And we woke up like super late the next day. Too late um, for us to get back in the race. And the problem with that was we slept so late that all the teams that were staying at Huzal were already gone. And so we had one alternator coming in from Misha at Ecotech. He was going to be coming down and spectating, and so we had an alternator on stage somewhere. And we had another alternator in Darren's uh, service truck in Potosi. And so it was just a matter of we got to get one of those alternators back here so we can get the car running, so we could pack it up and maybe go out and shoot some photos or just go home for the day. Whichever. That's where we were. And so we're sitting out in the Wi-Fi circle trying to get a hold of anybody, see if anybody's willing to help. And we're at everybody's mercy at this point. People have been lending us help all weekend at this point. And so I'm just like, take whatever I can get. We were literally the beggars at that point. And so eventually we see a truck come through that has like a service sticker in the front of it for the race. And so we asked, like, hey, you guys are with the race. Any chance you're going to Potosi? And so they said they were, like, can we hitch a ride to Potosi? We have an alternator we need to get to put on this car. And they're, space, et cetera, et cetera. And again, choosing beggars, but we managed to convince them of a means to take one of us. We don't both need to go to get an alternator. We just need somebody to go grab it. Frankly, these people would have gone and grabbed it if we, gave them enough instructions and they were willing to do so. And so Jim hopped in their truck and went up to Potosi, and he grabbed Darren's alternator. And I was just waiting for him to get back, and so while I'm waiting, I sent him to tear the cluster apart, see if I can't fix that, right? And I'm looking at it, and I'm looking for broken solder traces or what have you, and it all seems fine. And so I just kind of put it out of my mind. Eventually, Jim shows back up with the alternator, and Zach, one of the crew members for Cooper Auto Works, gave him a ride and also gave us a jump once I had the alternator installed. Of course, also while I was gone, I took the old one out so it could just be tossed back in. We can start the car up and be ready to go. Put it in, tightened it up, jumped it, and took the cables off and thought we were in good shape, and then the car died again. It bogged down and died again. And so, I'm like, that's weird, because an alternator going bad should, upon being replaced, just start charging the car, right? And we're like, maybe the battery was so dead that it just couldn't keep going. And so we had Zach jump the car again, take the cables off. 2 minutes later, it dies. And so, Zach's got obligations with Cooper Auto Works to take care of him. We can't hold him there all day. We get it. He goes off. So Jim and I start looking into it. And I'm like, Jim, the charging circuit in this car, as far as I know, is fairly simple. I don't know that it really does anything other than just send voltage out to the battery. And so we start looking at the schematics, and we start pulling out every fuse. Jim's in the hood, I'm in the inside of the car. And I find a fuse that's blown, and it's part of our instrument panel, right? And there's also part of like 30 other circuits: your blower motor, your power windows, your power locks, your daytime running lights, a bunch of other garbage that this thing is a part of, right? And so we pop a fuse back in that, and at the next chance we get another jump. I'm like, Jim, is it possible? He's like, he was telling me that some cars charge through the gauge cluster. They rely on a bulb to pull a field or something like that. And I'm like, well, if that's the case, would the car running for 2 minutes be consistent with that? Would the 30 seconds we had the car jumped be enough to charge the battery to run the car for 2 minutes? And he said, yeah, that's possible. And so the next person that came by willing to give us a jump, jumped our car, pulled the cables off, and it just kept running. And that car ran. We literally took the car back to the room, left it running while we changed the tires, packed it up, and we were on the road. And so we knew at that point that yes, our car does require our cluster in order to charge it, which is, super annoying because if how would the series of events changed had we known that? If I knew that in stage 2, our gauge cluster going out meant the car would stop charging, then I would have taken a better look at it in service, right? Especially if I knew it was a fuse, right? That fuse would have taken like a minute to replace, right? And so they say hindsight's 20/20, whatever. I probably said it 30 times in this video already. But then on top of that, imagine if I started digging into it in line at start for free. I might have found that fuse. I might have known that fuse went to the gauge cluster. And if I would have known that our alternator went through the gauge cluster, might have got a jump on stage. I don't know if anybody had cables, but we might have got a jump. And at that point, we would never need to be flat-toed back. We could have continued with the stage. We wouldn't have roasted our brakes. And we would have just got back to who's off, found somebody to copy notes off of, and went and did day 2 just fine. And so there's a lot of it stings, right? It's the suckiest DNF I think we've ever had. The blower motor went out at Show Me 2018. That was annoying. Then we had the radiator break, like an 1/8-inch size hole at Missouri Ozark Rally 2019. I think both those could have been fixed on stage or leading into the stage. Those I don't think were insurmountable, but at least we got to do most of the race, right? This time it just there's so much surrounding it that just sucked. And like I said, it's our 8th rally, right? We've started 8 rallies. Eventually we were going to come up across a situation like this where it wasn't triumphant enough of a finish. It wasn't oh well, that sucks DNF. It really sucked. But at the same time, it did show us just how cool the rally community can be in supporting us, and so that was the silver lining to it all, right? That's the sweet at the end of the bitter, was knowing that people were willing to help. And frankly, if we were in Potosi, if we stayed in Potosi, so much of this wouldn't have happened. And I don't want to Huzzah is a great facility. The only thing I don't like about Huzzah for what we were doing was I just feel like if we had better Wi-Fi or cell service where we were staying on the grounds. That's really it. I think moving forward, we're going to always stay at hotel where the race is being headquartered. It's as simple as that. Being around teams better facilitates gaining access to that generosity. You know what I mean? We had so many teams that were willing to help us, but in some ways we needed certain equipped teams to help us. You don't want gift horses in the mouth at all, and the amount of support we got was great. But we at the end of it, we needed an alternator and we needed front brake rotors for a Subaru, both of those for a Subaru. And if we were in Potosi, we'd more than likely would have had it. And we were in Huzzah, and I know Pete Schaefer was staying in Huzzah. I don't really know Pete Schaefer that well. I don't really know his car that well. I know it's a second gen. I think it's an STI, so who even knows? You probably wouldn't have had parts for us anyway. And so, yeah, overall, it wasn't the most fun rally I've ever done. But just the fact that we were still able, after burning the car down, the wrecking and service car that is, we're still able to go out there and give it an effort, right? I'm still proud of that. I just wish I hadn't conceded as early as we did. I feel like there was more rally in us. I feel like there was more rally in that car. I feel like there was more rally in that weekend. And so we packed the car up on Saturday. We got home Saturday night at like 9 o'clock and pretty much just called it. And so yeah, that's the story, I guess. The car's back. I have work I want to do to the car, and we'll go over that as it comes around. I typed a short story, a summary of the events on our Facebook page, and thanked all the teams. But again, Cooper Auto Works and their crew chief Zach helped us out a lot in facilitating getting the alternator back to us. Darren Vancouver, Boxer Motorsport, Boxer Rally Team. I can actually remember which one it is, and I'm terribly sorry at this juncture. It's one of those two. The other one was mistaken. I think it's actually Boxer Rally Team at this point. He lent us the alternator. Of course, I just gave the alternator back. We were really borrowing it, in essence. And because the one that we took off of it, as far as I can tell, is charging the car, right? Alternator was never the problem, as far as we know. But again, we'll get there. It's over now. Nothing I can do about it. Misha, Ecotech, those guys helping us get our tires beaded before the race, day of heading down there, coming in clutch as always, and then also offering up an alternator delivered to Huza. Again, I don't know what do you say? What do you say to a service like that? I don't know. This is why their name's on the car. Unamused Rally offered to lend us notes. Adam and Andy, both of them offered us notes. So many teams were willing to help. The organizers all helped. Team number 1, 2, 3, the Angles, their crew helped us get to Potosi. The organizers helped us out. Everybody knew, it spread like wildfire. It spread faster. It spread like wildfire. So word got around faster than the time that we had the blower motor go out at Show Me Rally 2018, and we didn't show up to start fast enough, and someone radioed that we were missing. Yeah, that night everyone thought we had blown the car up or some kind of crazy stuff, and the rumor mill kept going. So when this happened, everyone seemed to know what had happened to us, or that something had happened, not exactly what. And so as word got around, it meant that people were able to really lend help, and so that's just a good indicator of what the rally community does. One thing I did forget to talk about was that I meant to make a post about this that was made a way bigger deal than it was, but some people might notice that we ran car number 314 at Show Me Rally 2020. That's a big deal for a number of reasons, because if you haven't been following, we used to be car number 314 when we were with Rally America. When we went to ARA, we went back to car number 341, which had no real significance other than it was the same numbers that we thought we could shimmy around once we would pay to have the numbers cut out, but we weren't sure if we were going to be able to run number 314 on with the permission of who had it, and so we weren't really sure. But that way I could pay to have vinyl cut, and I could still use those numerals and just rearrange them. That's why it was 341. And so we kind of, it kind of just became this thing where every time a race came around, I would ask ARA officials, I'm like, hey, can we do something? Is there any way? I've got this guy's permission. He's willing to lend us the number. The race organizers are willing to let us run the number. Would you, as the sanctioning body, be willing to let us run this number that means so much to us? And also, if you're not familiar at all, 314 is the area code here in North County. To be fair, it's also the area code in a lot of the city and St. Louis County. But it is the area code here. And when we first founded the team and decided, let's become North County Rally Team, 314 was the perfect fit of a number. And, it was open at Rally America, and we grabbed it. And so now in ARA, it seems like freaking everybody wants to run number 314. It's evidently the most contested number, and somebody's already got it. That's the way it goes. And so, enough pestering, and folks at ARA were like, fine, we'll let you do it. We'll let you do it this once. All right? Fine. And so that's another reason it sucks, is because I was like, yes, our triumphant return is car number 314. It's going to be great. And it wasn't great. And so, they said this is your one chance. And so we go back to car number 341 at the beginning of the year, unless something happens. But I'm not banking on that happening. But that being said, the car, we redid the livery, and we put number 314 in all the spots where the car number goes for ARA. And until we race again, that's staying there. And when we get back from the race, 341's coming back off the car and 314 is going back on the car. I know that sounds silly. It sounds like a lot. We have a vinyl cutter now here, so it doesn't make a difference to me. It costs like 28 cents to make that change. I don't care. But the reason for that is, while the livery itself and the cards, the placards, the windshield vinyls, what have you, and the rules, they're all fitting ARA's standards, as far as I'm concerned, unless I'm racing, unless I'm paying to race, I'm not governed by ARA. And I don't mean any disrespect in that. It's just that we, North County it's part of our brand. You know what I mean? And with that comes the number 314. And if there's something preventing us from running number 314 in ARA, that's fine, and we respect that. But, that car gets driven around town, It gets driven to the Valley of Flowers car show, where it competes and won first in class last year. And it's important to me that it has that little bit of symbolism on it when we run it that way. And so we also do the rally crosses. We go to car shows, Cars and Coffee, a bunch of other stuff where, as a team, as a brand or whatever you want to call it, if we want to resonate with North County businesses, North County residents, and try to make this connection between us and North County businesses and hopefully North County sponsors, then yeah, team number 314 makes a lot of sense. And so it's much easier to market it that way to potential sponsors that we're so North County, our race number is 314. The car has 314 on it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I want to get vanity plates that say 314. It's, all this stuff, whatever. It just fits the image of the car, as dumb as I hate to say it like that, but it does matter. And I want to get that number on a more permanent basis with ARA, but as far as I can tell, I can just have it for SCCA, Cars and Coffee, car shows, driving around. And so, yeah, that's staying on. 341 will go on if and when we need it, is what I'm saying here. And that being said, I want to thank the folks at ARA for letting us run it, right? Just the once. It felt great to, even if it was only 2 stages, it felt great to see the number 314 going back on the car again. And maybe it's just because I can't put that feeling into words. Maybe it's that it's a dumb feeling to have in the first place. I don't know. But I really enjoyed seeing the number on my car. Because it reminded me of when we started and how it felt to just be out there doing it still. And so, yeah, I'm very thankful that they let us run it this one time. Hopefully something can be arranged in the future to let us run it more often, if not permanently. Like I said, someone else has it. They have every right to it. They got it first. That's the way it goes. Nothing I can do about that. But yeah, car number 314. It's 314 now, period. That's it. It's 314 forever. Hashtag 314 ever. And so, with that out of the way, yeah, I don't really know if this is going to be something I do more often, story time with this channel or this series. It was just like I said, the rumor mill. So, so many people heard something about what happened. I typed the story up on our Facebook page, and it's like 3 paragraphs long or whatever, but by my standards, that's awfully short, especially for how much stuff that did happen. And so I wanted to at least put this video out there to say, here's what actually happened. All of it, period. Start to finish. Here's what you want to know. And Even though it's not working on the car, it's not working on the garage, I felt it was appropriate for the series. Because that's, this garage is where that car was built. And so, that being said, maybe subscribe if you like hearing about stuff that goes on in this garage, or if you like watching our race videos, or if you like my sim racing stuff, or if you like me, or if you just like the stuff that I put on my channel. I'm hoping to do more of it. It's been a long time since I sat in front of a camera and just talked for an hour and a half. I don't know how long this video is going to be because I haven't edited it yet, because that's how time works. I imagine it's not going to be short, so if you've stuck with me this whole time, thank you. This means a lot for you to hear this really long story that I lived through. That being said, I think that's about all I have for this episode of Ty's Garage, which is named Ty's Garage because my name is Ty. This is my garage, and it makes sense. So thanks for sticking around. Don't know what the next video is going to be or when it's going up. Whenever I feel like, because that's the best I can do. But this one was easy to knock out because it's still fresh in my brain. So thanks for watching, guys. I'll see you next time.